Welcome back to Solomon's Treasury. Today, we're peeling back the curtain on something people talk about a lot, but few actually understand. How the Jewish community builds wealth that doesn't just last a lifetime, but for generations. When you look at the statistics, you might think there's some secret stock tip or a hidden bank account, but the real secret is actually much simpler and at the same time, much deeper. It comes down to two things: family and time. Think about it. As a community, we've been around for over 3,300 years. That is a massive amount of experience to draw from. We don't look at life in 24-hour news cycles or even 5-year business plans. We think in terms of continuity. When you have a history that spans thousands of years, you start to realize that you are just one link in a very long chain. Your job isn't just to make it for yourself. It's to make sure the chain stays strong for the people coming after you. We take family seriously because family is the only thing that carries your name and your values into the future. Money is just the tool we use to make sure that family stays together and thrives. Now, let's get into the practical side of this. We have a mission to create large families. We love kids, we love big holiday dinners, and we love having a house full of life. But here's the reality check. Building a big family is incredibly expensive. Let's be real for a second. Running a large household ship is no joke. Even if you're living a modest, non-flashy life, just the basics, housing, food, healthcare, and a good education can easily cost $15,000 a month. That's $180,000 a year just to keep the lights on and the fridge full. If you want to have 5, 6, or 7 children and give them a great start in life, you can't just wing it financially. You have to have a plan. This is why the pursuit of wealth in our community isn't seen as greed. It's seen as a necessity. If you don't have the means, you can't fulfill the mission of building a strong, large family unit. Money becomes the fuel for the family ship. Without it, the ship doesn't move. So, the first step in the Jewish wealth secret is recognizing that money is a tool for a higher purpose, the survival and flourishing of your bloodline. The third pillar of this head start is the concept of continuity. Most people in the modern world are raised with the rugged individualist mindset. They want to go out, leave the nest, and prove they can do it all on their own from scratch. While that sounds heroic in movies, in the real world of wealth building, it's actually quite inefficient. Every time a generation starts from ground zero, they waste the first 20 years of their adult life just trying to figure out how the world works. In our culture, we try to eliminate that waste. We want the next generation to start where the previous one left off. Imagine a relay race. If every runner had to go back to the starting line to get the baton, the team would never finish. But if you pass the baton while running at full speed, you break records. That's continuity. We teach our children that they don't need to reinvent the wheel. They just need to make the wheel turn faster and smoother. By focusing on continuity, we ensure that the hard work of the parents isn't lost, but becomes the foundation for something even bigger. If you're finding these insights helpful and want to learn more about the ancient principles of building a treasury that lasts, make sure to follow the channel. We have a lot more wisdom to share. There is a huge stereotype out there that every Jewish parent wants their kid to be a doctor or a lawyer. And sure, those are great, respected professions. But here's the internal shift you might not know. We don't want our kids to just be the doctor. We want them to own the medical practice. We don't want them to just be the architect. We want them to own the architectural firm. Why? Because a professional, no matter how talented, is still essentially trading their hours for dollars. If the doctor doesn't show up to the office, the doctor doesn't get paid. That's a job, not a wealth-building machine. A business owner, on the other hand, builds a system. They hire other doctors, other architects, and other lawyers. The business owner creates an entity that can grow beyond their own physical capacity. We teach our children very early that ownership is the key to the next level. If you want to build generational wealth, you have to move from being the person doing the work to the person owning the system where the work gets done. Where does this mindset come from? It's not from a textbook. It's from the dinner table. In many households, work is something parents do away from the home, and it's a source of stress that they don't talk about with the kids. In our community, business is a constant topic of conversation. Children grow up listening to their fathers and grandfathers discuss deals, negotiations, supply chains, and customer service. By the time a young boy is 12 or 13, he already understands the basics of profit margins and overhead simply through osmosis. He isn't intimidated by the world of commerce because he's been hearing about it since he was in a high chair. This dinner table education is more valuable than an MBA. It removes the fear of the unknown. When these kids grow up, they don't see starting or running a business as a giant, scary mountain. They see it as the family trade. They have the vocabulary and the mindset to step into the world of ownership without hesitation. The final part of the ownership mindset is understanding that the business is a family ship. It's not just dad's job, it's the vehicle that supports everyone. When children see the business this way, they develop a sense of responsibility toward it. It's not about what can I get from this business, but how can I protect and grow this business so it can support my siblings, my parents, and eventually my own children. This collective ownership mindset is a game changer. It creates a built-in support system. If the father gets tired or sick, the children are ready to step in because they know the ship must keep moving. This isn't about individual glory, it's about communal stability. When the goal is the survival of the family ship, people are more willing to work together, sacrifice their egos, and focus on long-term growth rather than short-term personal gain. It's a shift from me to us, and that is where true power lies. Do you think the ownership mindset is something anyone can learn, or do you have to be raised with it? Let me know your thoughts below. Let's talk about the ground zero trap. Most people start their careers or businesses at absolute zero. They have no customers, no reputation, no systems, and no capital. The first decade of any business is usually a brutal fight for survival. You're working 80 hours a week. You're the janitor, the CEO, and the delivery driver all at once. You're making mistakes that cost you time and money because you're learning as you go. Statistically, most businesses fail in these first few years. But even if you succeed, you've spent 10 or 20 years just getting the business to a place where it's solid and consistent. By the time you've built that foundation, you're often in your 50s or 60s, and you're tired. You've used up your best years just laying the bricks. In the Jewish community, we see those 20 years as a precious resource that we don't want our children to waste if they don't have to. The secret to skipping ground zero is simple. The son enters the father's business. If the father has spent 30 years perfecting a business model, stabilizing the cash flow, and building a brand, why should the son start a new, shaky business from scratch? If the son is diligent, respectful, and willing to work, he can step into a business that is already 3 decades deep. Think about the advantage that gives him. While his peers are struggling to find their first client, he is already operating within a proven system with established cash flow. He doesn't have to worry about whether the business will survive the month. He can focus entirely on how to make the business better. The father's sweat equity from the 1980s or 90s becomes the solid ground the son stands on in the 2020s. This isn't about giving the son a free ride, it's about giving him a head start. He still has to work, but his work is focused on expansion, not just survival. The biggest obstacle to this model is often ego. A lot of young people want to say, "I did it my way, I built this from nothing." They feel like stepping into a family business makes them look privileged or weak. But in our culture, we prioritize the family's long-term success over individual bragging rights. We see it as a waste of time and talent to walk away from a perfectly good foundation just to prove a point. If you have a 30-year-old business at your fingertips and you choose to go start a lemonade stand just to say you started from zero, you aren't being brave, you're being inefficient. We teach our kids that there is immense honor in taking something your father built and making it 10 times bigger. That requires a different kind of strength, the strength to set aside your ego for the sake of the family legacy. When you stop trying to be a self-made man and start trying to be a legacy builder, your potential for wealth explodes. If you had a successful family business to step into, would you take it? Or would you feel like you had to prove yourself by starting something new? Let's look at a real-life example to see how this works in the real world. Imagine a man whose father died young. He's 17 years old and has to support his family. He has no degree, no money, nothing. A neighbor who's in the scrap metal business takes him along on his routes as a favor. The young man learns how to spot valuable metal, how to negotiate with manufacturing plants, and how to haul the heavy stuff. Eventually, he buys his own truck, then he buys his own machinery. Then he rents a small yard. For 30 years, this man works with his hand power. He's the one driving the truck. He's the one lifting the metal. He's the one getting his hands dirty every single day. By the time he's in his 50s, he has built a solid business, doing maybe $8 million a year in volume. It's a great business, but it's limited by his physical energy. He's reached a plateau because there are only so many hours he can drive that truck. Now, the son comes into the business at age 20, but the son is entering a different world. He doesn't have to drive the truck because the business can already afford to hire drivers. He doesn't have to haul the metal because the machinery is already there. Because the basics of the business are already handled, the son can use his brain power. He looks at the business and says, "Why are we only doing scrap metal? Why don't we add new services? Why don't we use new technology to track our routes and optimize our pricing?" Because he has the mental energy and the financial means provided by the existing business, he can innovate. In this true story, the son was able to triple the business from 8 million to 30 million in just 10 years. It took the father 30 years to reach the first level, but because the son started at that level, he could reach the next one in a fraction of the time. That is the power of the brain power phase. This is a crucial point. Innovation is expensive and risky. If you are a solo entrepreneur struggling at ground zero, you can't afford to innovate. You're too busy trying to pay the rent. You don't have the brain power left at the end of the day to think about new product lines or global expansion because you're exhausted from hand power work. But when you enter an established family business, you have the means. The business pays your salary. It provides the office, and it gives you a laboratory to test new ideas. This is why Jewish family businesses often grow exponentially in the second or third generation. The first generation builds the cash cow, and the second generation uses that cow to fuel the next big leap. They aren't smarter than their fathers. They just have more resources and more time to think. They are standing on the shoulders of giants. What is one old school business in your town that you think could be tripled if someone just added modern technology to it? Now we have to be honest, it's not always a fairy tale. One of the biggest downsides of a family business is right there in the name, family. Doing business with people you share a dinner table with is incredibly complicated. Emotions get involved. Old childhood rivalries can flare up in the boardroom. Maybe you have two brothers who both want to be the boss, or maybe the father has a hard time letting go of control. This is where things can get messy. If the business starts to create a rift in the family, you have a major problem. In our community, we have a very clear hierarchy of values. Family is the first word, and business is the second word. Why? Because you can always start another business, but you can't start another family. If the business is destroying your relationship with your brothers or your parents, the business is no longer serving its purpose. Sometimes the most successful move you can make in a family business is to leave it. If the friction becomes too much, a son might realize that for the sake of the family ship and his own sanity, he needs to step out. But even then, there are rules. You don't leave and start a competing business. That would be a betrayal of the family unit. Instead, you take the skills, the mindset, and the treasury lessons you've learned, and you go into a completely different industry. You start a new branch of the family legacy elsewhere. This preserves the peace and ensures that the family isn't fighting over the same pot of gold. It's about expanding the family's reach, not dividing it. Leaving with grace is often the only way to ensure that you can still sit down together for the holidays and truly enjoy each other's company. Leaving the family nest to start your own business is a massive reality check. You realize very quickly just how much you took for granted. Suddenly, you're back at ground zero. You're back to the hand power phase. It's hard, it's exhausting. You might be 8 or 10 years into your new venture and still feel like you're barely scratching the surface compared to what your father had. But even in this struggle, you have an advantage. You have the Jewish business secrets in your DNA. You know how a successful business is supposed to look. You know the importance of systems, ownership, and long-term thinking. Even when you're starting over, you aren't starting from scratch mentally. You are building a new foundation that one day your own children will be able to step into so they don't have to struggle the way you did. You are making the sacrifice now so the next link in the chain is even stronger. Have you ever had a conflict with a family member over money or business? How did you handle it? Did you choose the money or the relationship? What is the end game for the Jewish patriarch? It's not just sitting on a beach doing nothing. It's a state of active semi-retirement. Imagine a father who worked those first 30 hard years. Today he's in his 60s. He spends half the year in Miami, he travels to Europe, and he enjoys his life, but he's still connected to the business. Why is this possible? Because he has 2 or 3 capable, hungry, well-trained sons running the day-to-day operations. He doesn't have to worry about the machinery or the trucks anymore. He acts as the chairman of the board, giving wisdom and guidance when needed, while his sons do the heavy lifting. He has achieved the ultimate goal. His investment is growing, his legacy is secure, and his children are thriving, all while he enjoys the fruits of his labor. Everyone wins. People often ask, how do you stop the kids from becoming spoiled trust fund babies? The answer is in the family business model itself. In this system, the kids don't just inherit a bank account, they inherit a responsibility. They aren't just given money, they are given a job that requires them to be diligent and sharp. They've heard the stories of the scrap metal truck at the dinner table for 20 years. They know the price that was paid for their head start. This creates a sense of stewardship. They don't want to be the generation that loses the family fortune. They want to be the generation that takes it to the next level. They stay hungry because they want to honor their father's work and secure the future for their own children. The business keeps them grounded and productive. This is the ultimate secret of Solomon's treasury, the 40-year advantage. While the rest of the world is focused on making it by age 30, we are focused on what the family will look like 40 years from now. When a father passes a 40-year-old business to his children and they run it for another 40 years, you now have an 80-year-old institution. An 80-year-old business has deep roots, massive credibility, and huge capital. It can survive recessions, market shifts, and global crises that would destroy a startup. This is how generational wealth is actually built. It's not about one person getting lucky on a stock. It's about a family sticking together, valuing time, and building on top of each other's work for decades. It's about building a treasury that stays full because the family never stops adding to it. Thank you for spending this time with us at Solomon's Treasury. These secrets aren't just for one community. They are principles that anyone can apply if they are willing to shift their mindset. If this video brought you value and gave you a new perspective on your own family's future, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Share this video with your siblings or your parents. Start that conversation at your own dinner table tonight. Comment below and tell us what is one business principle you want to pass down to your children. Let's build our treasuries together. God bless, and we'll see you in the next video.